What's good, CDL fans? Welcome back to Champs Sunday with Jake Maverick. This episode, we're going to be talking a bit about the Major 2 seeding, so the matches this coming weekend and where some teams can end up in the seeding, like winner's bracket or loser's bracket, heading into the Major. We're also going to talk about the broadcast segment they did on the CDL broadcast, where the desk did a drawing conclusions segment to start off the stream on Sunday, sort of criticizing OpTic. I want to give some thoughts and to get your guys' thoughts on that. We're going to talk about a couple players that, just to highlight them, just to give some spotlight on some of these players I think have been cooking recently, that also maybe some of these haven't been talked about too much. I'm also going to go over a couple hot takes in this video. I put out a tweet like over a month ago asking for hot takes. I'm actually going to be doing a full video. Should be coming out later this week, reacting to a bunch of hot takes, but I wanted to add a couple extra in here since there's a bunch of them that I'll never be able to get through all of them. And then at the end, we're going to, of course, end off with the Ask Jake segment. So strap in, get your popcorn. Don't forget to drop a like and sub, and let's hop right in. And let's start it by talking about Major 2 and the potential seeding. So first things first, it looks like the seeding is almost like pretty certain. Well, the exact seeding itself isn't certain, but pretty much the teams, other than I think 3 of them, are almost like guaranteed if they're going to make winners or losers bracket. I believe the only 3 teams that can still make winners is Boston, Miami, and technically LAG. So Boston and Miami play each other this coming weekend on Saturday. The winner of that probably will get the number 8 seed. But if Miami loses to Boston and then loses to Ravens, who they also played this coming weekend, which is also the last weekend of qualifiers, if you didn't know, for Major 2. Major 2 is, only 10 days away, which is pretty insane. I'll be there, so hit me up if you're going to be at Major 2 down here in Texas. But if Heretics lose to the Breach and the Ravens, they would be 2-5. And if LAG were to beat OpTic and FAZE this weekend, which, I mean, in them beating FAZE is probably not going to happen, they would technically get the 8 seed and Boston would get the 7 seed. So there is still a chance for LAG in some crazy world that they can make it if they win their 2 matches this weekend. But it looks like the top teams are pretty much set and the bottom teams are pretty much set. If I just pull this up real quick, LAT, FAZE, Surge, C9, Ultra, Ravens, and even Rocker look like they're pretty much all solidified into that winner's bracket, where Miami and Boston are pretty much primarily fighting for the 8 seed. And then the loser of that, plus LAG, plus Falcons, plus OpTic, are going to be in losers. It was confirmed by Breaking Point. OpTic is guaranteed to be starting in losers bracket, which is one unexpected, obviously, coming into this stage. I mean, they underperformed at Major 1, but they were really good online in Major 1. So definitely think a team like OpTic going to make winners. But also, it is their home major. They're doing their ring ceremony, getting their champs rings finally, which is pretty cool for them. That's another thing I want to touch on, actually. This is something off the top of the dome that I want to touch on that I just thought of that I didn't already have written down. But yeah, they're already in losers bracket. Vegas is obviously already in losers bracket. And really the only key seeding matchup, well, I'm sure seeding could change, right? But the only key winners bracket matchup is going to be that Miami-Boston match, which is the first one on Saturday. But honestly, before I even forget what it was that I just thought of, I wanted to say, let's talk about it real quick before we move on and talk about maybe a couple of the other matches. And then talk about champ seeding, because there's something I wanted to say about that. But here's what I want to say about this whole OpTic. And obviously, they're being disappointing this year, but having such a great year last year. I talked about this a ton on my watch party, and I feel like a lot of people agree with me, but there's also some people who I don't think fully understand this concept. Because a lot of people are like, they're not making a roster change because of the ring ceremony. Like, they don't want to change the roster because on Thursday at Major 2, which is literally in just 10 days, like I said, they're going to be getting their rings and being celebrated for winning champs last year. To me, that is just absolutely insane. Now, if that's what they're doing, it's still insane to me, but people are saying this. It doesn't make any sense, bro. I don't know how other to put it than OpTic could get dead last every event this year. They could lose every single series this year with this core 4. It doesn't change that they were so good last year. It doesn't take away that they won champs last year. It doesn't take away that they won Major 3 last year. Nothing OpTic does, nothing this core 4 does this year, next year, the year after that, right? Obviously, they're not going to stick that long, but you get what I'm saying. Nothing they go on to do changes the fact that they just won champs. People were telling me in the watch party, people are going to boo, OpTic fans are going to boo them when they get their rings. Why, bro? It took 7 years for this OpTic team to get another ring, right? 2017 when the Dynasty won it, to 2024 when this team that the current roster won it last year. You're going to boo them after 8 months, after what was 7 years of not winning a ring and finally getting one because they were bad this season. BO6 and MW3 don't have any correlation to each other, bro. Just because they're bad at BO6 does not take away from them being the best team in Modern Warfare 3. It does not take away from them being the champions and getting their rings. They should be celebrated for that. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I've heard some crazy things over the last couple weeks about OpTic. You know, since they're so bad this year, apparently it doesn't matter. They were good last year and won the rings. I think to me, that just sounds kind of crazy. But real quick, getting back on track for Major 2. One match this weekend I'm super excited for is the Toronto Ultra versus the Vancouver Surge. We saw these two teams play each other in the minor, and Surge 3-0 smoke showed them. Like, it was not even competitive. I think this coming weekend, this Friday, it's the first match on Friday, actually, is going to be super, super interesting because Toronto look much better. Like, they look a lot cleaner. Joe Deceives has been godlike this stage, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But Kleenex feels like he's finally getting back to the form he was in stage 2. Beans has honestly been doing pretty good. Insight's been getting a lot more kills than I feel like people are giving him credit for. If any of you like to do the whole betting, whether it's prize picks or agent picks or underdog, check out agent picks, by the way, link in the description. Use code MAV at sign up, support me if you want to use one of my partners. But Insight's actually been hitting his overs for like maps 1 through 3 pretty consistently. So he's been getting more kills than he's kind of projected to get. So I just want to give him that shout out. But this series, I think, is going to be much better. With Surge, feels like they're coming back down to earth a little bit, right? Nasty had a little bit of a slower weekend than maybe he was previously. Neptune kind of slowed down a little bit. He's still really, really good. But like the team itself feels like they're coming back down. I still think Surge are really good, still a top 3 team. And I still think Ultra are really good, still a top 5 team. So I think this matchup is going to be much better this weekend. And should be a pretty entertaining way to honestly start the weekend on Friday with this being the first matchup. Touching on a couple of the other ones before we move on, LAT versus OpTic is the second match on Friday. Obviously, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how OpTic can play. Maybe after another week of practice and scrims and grinding, they'll come out looking a bit better versus LAT, but I'm sure not many people have high expectations for OpTic in that series. And then OpTic also plays LAG, which to me, they should be able to win a map versus LAG. I know they haven't won a map versus anybody other than Falcons in the last, like, what, month, 2 months? But LAG is just not that good, bro. I mean, they nearly lost a hard point to Falcons yesterday on Sunday. I really think OpTic should be able to take a map off of LAG. They just got to, like, play together a little bit. Like, they clearly just don't know what's going on in the game right now, which is insane because they were so good with HAVOK, right? So I don't get how putting Pred in can make them, like, fundamentally forget how to play Black Ops 6, but either way, I think that match could be a chance for OpTic to at least get a map or maybe 2 maps under their belt to just spark a little or inspire a little bit of like confidence going into Major 2. They get their rings, the home crowd. I know people want to talk about home crowd cheese, things like that. Maybe it will inspire them a little bit this weekend if they just come out and finally get a map on the board versus a team that's not named the Vegas Falcons. So this weekend's matches, though, honestly look pretty good. And like I said, winners bracket, Boston versus Heretics is going to be great. And then obviously other matches are going to determine the exact seeding of like, you know, who are LAT and FAZE going to play in winners round 1. These different matches are going to help decide that. So that's going to be interesting. And we'll obviously talk about Major 2 and my predictions and the round 1 matchups and things like that in next week's episode of this show. But speaking of seeding, I want to talk about OpTic and the champ seeding because I've seen this increasingly on the timeline and in videos and on streams of people talking about OpTic and are they going to qualify for champs, right? I've seen people saying they think OpTic's in a really tough spot and they might not qualify for champs. And my personal opinion on this is like, they should be fine long term. Now, obviously, if they played like this the rest of the year, there's no chance they make champs. They're going to make a change, bro. Like, maybe they won't, right? Because this is a world champion roster. Maybe they're going to double down and really hope that they can figure it out. But this is a generationally bad slump out of this team, or out of any team, honestly, to go this long without winning a map versus anyone that's not Falcons, that I definitely think they're going to make a change. What that change will be, I have no idea, but I don't think they could get much worse, right? The only thing they get worse at is if they lose to Falcons, which, no disrespect to Falcons, but I don't think any version of OpTic is going to lose to Falcons. So to me, I don't think they should be worried, right? I think long-term over the season, as long as they, even if they get to like a T5, T6 caliber team, they're going to make champs, right? Like they don't even have to be top 2, top 3, like I guess they were expected to be. I still think they're going to make champs. And if they continue to struggle, right, but like they're playing like a middle of the pack team, like let's say they're one of those teams that's like a couple wins here, a couple losses here, right? They're mid-pack. Even if they get to that point, they would be fighting with Rocker, with Miami, with Boston, and with Cloud9 for the 6 through 8 seeds. So obviously that's more teams than 6 through 8, but their chances of making champs are still really, really good, honestly. And like, if I pull up the overall standings on my screen just to show you, they're at 85 points right now. They're number 8. They're 5 points behind number 7. They're 15 points behind number 5, right? So they're still a couple wins away from being top 5 in the standings. And then behind them, 15 points behind them is Boston. And then 20 points behind them is Cloud9. So like, maybe LAG get a bit better. They're only at 30 points right now. And Falcons are definitely not going to qualify. I don't think that's a hot take. But I just think OpTic, like, are they going to take a top 3 seed? Probably not, right? I think FaZe and LAT are going to guaranteed be top 2. They're already 60 to 70 points ahead of number 3, which is pretty insane. So even if OpTic bomb out T12 at this major, they still have all of stage 3, all of stage 4 to try and make something happen. Now, there is no more minors according to the CDL schedule. Maybe they'll add them, but I don't think they're going to. I think the minors are done for the rest of the year. So that takes away some opportunity for some points, but they're going to have 10 more online qualifiers, because if you didn't know, stage 3 and stage 4 are only 5 each. They're not 7 like we've just had. I don't know why the schedule is like that. It probably has something to do with when they're able to book venues for majors. But they're going to have 10 more online quals and 2 more lands, 2 more majors to get some points on the board. Obviously, being number 8 going into stage 3 is not going to be ideal for OpTic, and they could potentially be lower or higher depending on how they do at the major. But I still think that as long as they like make a change, bro, as long as they don't stick with this roster, I really think they will be fine. They might not be top 4 like they want to be or top 3 like they want to be, but it's too early for me to overreact about OpTic not making champs when we're not even technically halfway through the season. And I know there's gonna be people saying like, you're giving OpTic too much credit, or like maybe I'm being like too positive, or I'm just an optimist. Like, genuinely, just in life, I like to look on the bright side of things. Plus, OpTic is, you know, they have some of the best players. They had one of the best seasons last year. I know I just said MW3 and BO6 have no correlation like a few minutes ago, and they don't. We know how good these players can be, and we've even seen how good Dashy and Shotzzy and even Pred at times can be in this game. To me, like, I feel like I have to be optimistic and positive, because at the end of the day, it is still OpTic. It is still 4 players currently. I'm sure at least one of them is going to get dropped in the near future, right? Probably Kenny. But all of them have won MVPs. All of them have been top players. They're going to make champs. If they don't make champs, bro, if OpTic don't make champs, I mean, who knows what's gonna happen? Shotzzy and Dashy might blow it up, bro. They might be gone. I can't even lie. They might be gone. Now let's talk about the broadcast and the drawing conclusions segment they did. So if you haven't watched any CDL matches this year, which I'm guessing if you're watching this, you have, they do a segment after map 2 called drawing conclusions, where either Nameless or Ali draws conclusions based on like the mini map and a certain play or different things that happen typically in the hardpoint map 1 of each series, which I think is a great addition. But they did a drawing conclusions segment right at the beginning of the stream on this past Sunday, talking about OpTic's mistakes in the red card hardpoint versus Miami Heretics, and even went into the listen to their comms. And some people might think they were like clowning on them, and like maybe that's a word you can use that's fair, but they obviously approached it from a conclusions perspective of like, here's what they should be doing and not what, and what they did and why they shouldn't be doing what they did and why what happened was not good. The part that was controversial about this was they've never done a drawing conclusion segment on anything that isn't in the series that was currently playing, right? This was to start the stream, so no series had even started. They've never done this before, so it was kind of taken as like a, whoa, the CDL's clowning on OpTic for views. And I wanted to give you my thoughts on the whole situation. Number one, what they mainly talked about was Pred not knowing the spawns, right? In the comms, the listening they listened to, he asked Kenny where they were spawning. Kenny literally said, they could be spawning dark on me. And then Pred respawned like a second later and said, Ken, where are they spawning? And that was kind of the key talking point from Nameless and from Puckett and from Maven on the desk of like, Pred doesn't know spawns. Why is he asking where the spawns are? And I've seen different opinions on this situation about, is that like a crazy comm? Like, is it okay for a player to maybe not know spawns here and there? According to the desk, this was not a normal thing to hear in a listen-in. A bunch of fans were like, Pred hasn't played the game in a long time. Like, maybe he's not going to know spawns. Or if he actually didn't, maybe wasn't sure where they were spawning because they were getting splits. Asking Kenny, who's one of the best minds in the game, where they're spawning, is that really all that bad? Shotzzy even went on stream yesterday and said, like, I don't know exactly what he said, but essentially, like, sometimes he asks where spawns are as well and things like that. Like, it's kind of being blown out of proportion what happened with Pred. My personal opinion on the subject is Pred should know spawns, right? Even with the break he took. The spawns are the same no matter what you're playing. Now, yes, in a team environment with your core 4, you can manipulate spawns better than if you're playing 8s or if you're playing pubs, things like that, if you're playing ranked, obviously. That is for sure. But as a player that's playing at the highest level, is probably making a good amount of money to play COD, and is a world champion, you should probably know the spawns, being as the game's been out for like 6 months at this point. Also, for me, I have not played the game at the highest level, right? Like, I'm probably one of the few creators on here that is not like an ex-pro that can really talk about the game from a truly player perspective or strategic or skilled level, right? Like, I am basically just a fan, right? I'm a very hardcore fan that's watched a lot of COD, but I'm essentially just a fan. So the intricacies of how to play the game, that is not my specialty, and I will never pretend like it is. So for me, when it's something like this that is very specific to like what you do as a player and what you should know as a player, I default to other people that did it at the highest level. So when a guy like Nameless says he's never heard anyone say this in a comm, like that Pred should know spawns, when a guy like Zuma or Parasite or Octane on the flank say that Pred should know the spawns, that is my default. So when guys like that, world champions, dudes that have won multiple events, say that he should know the spawns and him asking where are the spawns is a very uncommon comm, to me, that's an indicator that he probably should know the spawns, especially because Kenny called it out right before. It's possible he just didn't hear him, right? Obviously, like, sometimes you're just not going to hear things when people are talking to you, especially in the hectic moments of comming mid-map. But to me, that's kind of where I default. But the second part of this thing that I also wanted to touch on was, should the CDL be doing these segments? Like, was it wrong for them to do a segment like this, sort of, like I said, clowning on OpTic, or like continuing to push the narrative and the storyline of like OpTic's really bad right now? To me, I think they totally should be doing this right now. Obviously, it feels really bad because A, they've never done this before, and B, it's about OpTic, who's the biggest fan base. And of course, OpTic fans, who, like I said, make up a majority of the community, are going to be pretty upset about this. I feel like that's why it's been generally painted in a negative light online. But these are the types of things that, like, you need to drive storylines and to drive interest in your esport, in your sport, right? There's a reason, like, I mean, looking at COD specifically, the flank and a guy like Aches is so good for getting views is because he says hot takes. He says things that are controversial. He says things that maybe other people don't want to. There's a reason there's shows in every single sport, right? You could listen to a dozen different podcasts or watch different shows on ESPN or listen to them on Spotify, watch them on YouTube, of people doing this similar thing for every sport, every esport under the sun, right? This type of content is what drives views. Now, it's going to get backlash especially because it's OpTic and they're really, really bad right now. But the truth is, this type of stuff is only going to benefit the scene. Now, there comes with one big caveat, and I have an example of this to give you. They have to continue to do this. If the CDL broadcast does not do these drawing conclusion segments randomly about teams making bad mistakes, maybe the day prior, then to me, it was strictly a play of just like capitalizing on OpTic being ass. And the example of this I give is the 100 Point Club song last season. People have heard me bitch about this on stream, right? Obviously, I'm really not that angry about this. Like, at the end of the day, it's people playing video games for a living. I'm not that, you know what I'm saying? Doesn't really take an effect on me that much. But 100 Thieves, LA Thieves got 100 Point Club last year in MW3. And they played this song that was the 100 Point Club song. It was a custom-made song about a team getting shit on and getting 100 Point Clubbed in Hardpoint. They never played it a single time after that, right? LA Thieves would 50 Point Club the Vegas Legion. Other teams would get 100 Point Club. They never played that song a single time. And to me, it's like, why? Like, why do it in the first place if you're not going to continue it as a running joke, as a running segment on the show? So, if anyone in the CDL is listening to this, when other teams make really bad mistakes, or they play really bad, or they have really bad listen-ins in certain moments, you got to continue this drawing conclusions segment like you just did for OpTic, because you've now set the precedent. And if you don't do it, you kind of just basically openly admitted that you're just trying to clickbait and get views, capitalizing on OpTic being really bad. And it's not actually like an educational type of segment to actually help viewers and things like that. It's more or less just a way to get views, which I know at the end of the day, they need views, right, to be in business. But to me, that's just kind of my opinions on it. You let me know what you think about the whole segment in the comments. Now I want to talk about a couple players this stage and highlight a couple players that I think have been really good. I want to start off with two very obvious ones, but they have been significantly incredible this stage so far. Hydra, number one. He's first in KD, first in Slayer rating, first in Hardpoint KD, second in Hardpoint kills per 10, second in SND KD, second in SND kills per round, and first in Control KD. Hydra's just been night and day from how good he was in stage 1. In stage 1, he was good in respawn. He was really bad in search, but he looks like MVP Hydra again. And obviously, the Thieves fan, that's great. But anyone who's watched can see that Paco just looks godlike right now in the game. And that counter side of Hydra, that other SMG superstar that I got to touch on is Simp, right? Number 2 in KD, number 4 in Slayer rating, number 4 in SND KD, number 2 in SND kills per round, number 1 in plants. He's planted the bomb the most this stage. And number 2 in control kills per 10. So Simp also is a guy that has been absolutely godlike. He is undoubtedly number 1 in MVP for me right now, right? We've only had one major and FaZe won it, so someone from them should probably get MVP. And for me, that's Simp. He's just been so good. But a couple other players that maybe haven't been talked about as much. Extriel is number 4 in overall KD right now. He has been absolutely incredible. He's been the best player on the rocker, who have been, you know, a bit up and down, but I think have consistently kept themselves in that T8 conversation. Obviously looked at as a dark horse, but Extriel to me, especially this stage, has just been incredible. Joe Deceives, this kid's going to be a superstar one day. I mean, I don't know if you can see, but right there, I have a Joe Deceives autograph card that I got on eBay for $10 like last week, first of all. So shout out to Joe Deceives. Love that guy. I'm a big Joe Deceives fan. But I genuinely think this kid is going to be a superstar one day. He's in his 3rd year, and he's only like 20, maybe just 21 years old. He's number 2 in Slayer rating, number 1 in hardpoint kills per 10, and he's number 2 in SND KD on the entire year. He has been so good. He has been their best player. Kleenex was really good stage 1, and Joe was also really good, but Joe has kept it up. And Kleenex kind of took a little bit of a dip, like we talked about a bit earlier, but Joe D to me has been incredible. And just some other guys that maybe haven't been talked about. Kremp, Sib, Real, Rencor, Geo, all 5 of those guys have been really good this stage and have been key to their team playing well and maybe turning around some of the form for their team. So all those guys there's even more I could list, right? I could go on and on, but all those guys I just mentioned, I think deserve a lot of praise and a lot of love for how well they've been playing this stage. But now let's talk about a couple hot takes. Like I said, there's going to be a video out on my channel probably sometime this week reacting to a bunch of the hot takes from this tweet I put out. So if you want to see the full video with probably a dozen or so hot takes, check that out. Make sure you sub to the channel to see that. But I want to talk about a couple of them real quick in this video just to add some extra things to talk about because there are a bunch of fun ones. And like I said, there's like 50 comments on this tweet. I can never get to all those in one video. This first one I think is hilarious because this comes from my guy Random, so shout out to him. He said, and also let me preface, this tweet was from February 5th. So it's been over a month since I tweeted this, so it's funny to react to a couple of these hot takes now that it's a month later, but he said, Gentlemates, who are currently 10th in the standings, will finish the season top 6 without a roster change. And he thinks they're going to turn it around starting at Major 2. Obviously, in hindsight, it's hilarious because they've already made changes. They brought in Lunars, they dropped Priesta, and they brought Priesta back for Skies, and they look like they need another change in the future. To me, I just thought that was a funny one I had to mention, especially because that's my guy Random. And clearly, Gentlemates are not turning it around just yet. Here's another one that is funny to look at in hindsight. This comes from Yogi B, aka Wolfpack on Twitter. He said, Toronto should drop Joe for HAVOK. They would instantly shrink the gap with the top teams. Not saying they'd be on par with Thieves, OpTic, and FaZe, but they'd be much closer than the other 8 teams. Obviously, we just talked about Joe Deceives. In hindsight, this is really funny. In the moment, it didn't seem like the worst take, probably because HAVOK looked godlike, and he still is definitely going to be godlike when he comes back, but Joe D looks incredible right now, so I think him and Kleenex are just a great duo. One more before I go into the Ask Jake segment to close out the video. This comes from my guy Obsidian. This, like I said, this tweet, this reply was from February 12th, so it was like a month ago. He said, OpTic is overrated. It's kind of hilarious looking back because ever since he tweeted this, pretty much, they haven't won like a map other than everyone off Falcons. So maybe Obsidian had the, had the script on this one, but it's just interesting to look back at some of these hot takes over a month later to see, were they accurate? Were they coming true? Or in this case, which ones end up looking like really hot takes when you look back at them? But now let's end the video with the Ask Jake segment. I only got one question, so if you have questions for me to talk about next week, drop them in the comments down below. But this question comes from Pren, and they ask, what's your perfect best of 5 map set from the CDL era, mix and match from different games from the era? So this one was fun because I got to think back on it. I decided to add the rule that I could not pick maps that were in previous like COD titles. So I didn't pick Raid, I didn't pick Standoff, and I didn't pick any of the maps from MW3 last year that were in the beginning of the game because they were technically MW2 2009 maps. So I went with the brand new maps, essentially, that we got in the CDL era. So my perfect, or I don't know if this is really perfect, but this is the ones that I came up with. My map set, map 1, Rio Hardpoint. Rio was just absolutely great to watch. You could replace this with Bocage Hardpoint because they both were just super fun to watch, but Rio, I think, was always super fun, and you could also kind of manipulate and hold spawns in certain times, which I thought is, one of the keys in a good hardpoint map. Not on super unpredictable spawns, at least you could sort of predict or manipulate, like I said. So Rio map 1. Map 2, Berlin SND. I thought Berlin Search was really, really good. We saw a bunch of great highlights and moments back in Vanguard on Berlin Search. So that's my map 2. Map 3, I went with Hotel Control. Hotel, I also have to add the other caveat in here. This is without snaking. You take out snaking in MW2, some of these maps are better, especially Hotel. So I think Hotel Control would have been great, and was actually one I was kind of hoping they were going to use in MW3 as well, like just carry it forward from MW2. Map 4, Tuscan Hardpoint. Some of the craziest map endings. The amount of, I can literally, the first thing I think of when I think of Tuscan Hardpoint is Pred versus FaZe on Tuscan HP. Obviously Surge, but Pred making big plays to win Surge maps on Tuscan HP. So many banger hardpoints on that map. And then lastly, Game 5, I got Moscow Search and Destroy, little Cold War throwback. I thought Moscow was just one of the best maps in that game. That was a new map. And the SND was pretty good. So that's my map set for CDL era maps. That's going to do it for this episode of Champ Sunday with myself, Jake Maverick. Like I said, sub to the channel for more CDL content, a bunch of new videos, streams. We're going to be watching challengers, we're going to be watch partying the CDL matches. Appreciate the support you guys have been showing me. It's been absolutely insane. So with all that being said, hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.